We don't have institutional liquidity flowing on the XRP ledger yet. And that's what we have to understand. Why would we be expecting XRP to be at these super high prices at this point in the game when we don't have regulatory clarity? And none of the institutional flows are on the XRP ledger, or at least relatively none of the flows compared to where we're going. And I got a direct quote from Brad Garlinghouse talking about taking it to 16 trillion. That's how much Ripple settled last year between Ripple payments and the acquisitions that they've made of Ripple Prime, Treasury, etc. And so we have this interview that Brad Garlinghouse just did yesterday on CNBC. I'm going to show you guys the full interview, and he calls out Michael Saylor, but then he also explains, right, Ripple has acquired and is now in control of 16 trillion of flows of liquidity that went through their network last year. And he basically said none of it's on the XRP ledger yet. This is the process, and this is the opportunity. From a $1 XRP today to I'm not even going to say the number. You put it in the comments down below. Where are we going? Here's the clip. Brad Garlinghouse, CNBC.
Brad Garlinghouse, Ripple, of course, a member of CNBC's Disruptor 50 list. It's great to have you back at the NYSE, Brad. Good to see you.
Great to be back.
So when they were a seller for the first time in a while, strategy that is, that got a lot of notice. Do you think that started something?
I think it definitely started something. And, I think the challenge is it added some excitement on the way up. And now that's compounding on the way down as well. And so as we have seen, crypto is going to go through its cycles. Many asset classes do that. I think because they were using leverage, Michael Saylor would characterize it differently than leverage per se. But at the end of the day, it was leverage. And then you start to see that in a place that can actually compound negatively. I mean, seeing their the particular thing they have pegged at 100 now trade, I think 25% below par, is a pretty damning indictment. And I don't think that's helped the market.
Yeah, a ticker, if the booth is wondering, that would be STRC, which we're watching closely. I mean, there's been a lot of ink spilled on how Saylor protects the preferred, protects the currency, and protects the equity. Do you think one should come first?
Look, I actually think what should come first is focusing on what's going to drive long-term value. And I think that financial engineering does not drive long-term value. I said actually on CNBC 5 or 6 years ago that I thought the long-term value of any digital asset is going to be driven by utility. And if it's solving a problem at scale for real customers, you're going to see liquidity, you're going to see demand, you're going to see trust in that asset. Those things compound in a positive way. And I think if you're just trying to financial engineer and leverage and borrow more money to buy more Bitcoin, it's kind of like, look, I'm bullish on Bitcoin. I think I subscribe to the Warren Buffett expression of be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. Now's the time, I think, to be greedy. But I also think, Team Michael Saylor wasn't focused on the right stuff, and that has hurt the overall market.
So what do you think the utility of Bitcoin is now?
Well, Bitcoin has definitely carved out, I think, a space as digital gold. And, there's all kinds of funny stories about when the central bank of Germany was moving $300 billion of gold. It took 2 years and billions of dollars to move it. If you wanted to move $300 billion of Bitcoin, you could do that in a pretty reasonable, quick way. So I think about Ripple's digital asset that we focus on as kind of our technology stack, XRP. The utility there is really focused on payments. And leveraging the speed and efficiency of that blockchain in a way for institutions. And we've seen tremendous demand. I mean, last year, partly through acquisitions, we cleared $16 trillion of payments or clearing on the prime brokerage business. But last year, the percentage of that went through a digital asset was close to 0%. So the opportunity is to introduce and bring traditional finance, and Ripple's strategy from the beginning has been, how do we bring traditional finance into the modern architecture of blockchain? And now through some acquisitions, we have a tremendous opportunity to bring that in.
And there you have it, folks. That is the key opportunity, is that the 16 trillion that was cleared, payments and settlements cleared by Ripple and the companies that they acquired, close to zero was on the XRP ledger. Now, did he say that it's not going to go to the XRP ledger? No, he said that's the opportunity. That's where we're taking this. And so if we're sitting here at $1 XRP in the middle of June 2026, why is this happening? There's your answer. There's your answer. Ripple hasn't flipped the big switches yet. We've had a bunch of little switches that add up that build momentum. And let's go back to these comments here because there's 3 key takeaways. The leverage, right? Why have we dropped so far down to $1 XRP? Because we're unwinding all of this leverage. Financial engineering is not utility, but leveraging, on top of each other, stacking it up, that's not lasting utility and value. And just like Brad Garlinghouse said, it pumps it on the way up, but then it almost hurts it more because you come back so violently. And so many people get caught up in that. Michael Saylor, right? He can call it whatever they want. It's leverage. That's what it is. You can use whatever AI model you want, right? It came out, Michael Saylor using AI to come up with his models. You're going to have to check that one again. Maybe use what ChatGPT came out with a new model that's better than Claude's model. And, what's going on here? The program's not working out, right? That's the question I've been asking since 2021. How's your program working out? And we had to unwind Bitcoin leverage, Ethereum leverage, meme coin leverage, all of these hedge funds in digital asset treasury companies like Saylor's, right, that took on all this leverage. All of that unwinding is why we're down so bad, right? And we've seen this through the past cycles. Now, the reason why we won't have as big of a drawdown is because we have matured as an industry. So for XRP, it's probably only going to be a 75% drawdown. And by the way, that's pretty much done. Like we've already done a 72% drop for XRP this bear market cycle. You're pretty much at the bottom. And like Brad Garlinghouse said, all of this, what Saylor was doing with Bitcoin, was that driving long-term value? Was that actually creating real utility? Some would say yes, maybe, right? And we'll end up seeing how this plays out. But we started to talk about this last year when we said, okay, Tether's probably not going to be the domino that drops and blows everything up this cycle. Probably going to make it through. And they started to actually make other stablecoins outside of Tether. But we started to turn our attention to Michael Saylor's program with Strategy, Jack Mallers with Strike. You have some Ethereum treasury companies. And then you also had hedge funds too. And I've talked about how there was a hedge fund that was going long Ethereum. They got wiped out for $750 million of realized losses. All of this unwinding of that leverage that took us up to $126,000 for Bitcoin, that took us up to $3.66 for XRP, that was all mostly retail leverage stacked with hedge fund and digital asset treasury leverage that was never going to be lasting. Do we want to see digital asset treasury companies for XRP? Absolutely. But do we want them to over-lever themselves so that they have to unwind massive positions and cause mass carnage? No. And that's what we allowed to happen. On top of that, the meme coins, all of that, none of that was utility. So Brad Garlinghouse always has been the adult in the room. Just like the XRP community that's been saying, hey, maybe we should focus on the utility. Maybe we should actually help the institutions and banks that want to keep their clients, that want to serve their customer base better. Let's go help them. Sure, we're up against some of the bankers like Jamie Dimon that are absolutely trying to hammer us back into submission, keep all the idle yield on stable coins, right? And they've had major victories, and we're still in the middle of that fight trying to get Clarity Act done. But to bring it to the final point that I think is so important for everybody to understand, we're at zero. We're going zero, not to 100. We're going 0 to 16 trillion. And this isn't a hypothetical. Oh, Ripple might capture this percentage of Swift. Ripple might capture this percent of the DTCC. They already cleared and settled 16 trillion last year, but none of it, or close to zero, was on the XRP Ledger. That's why we're at $1. And when you understand that, it's like, okay, makes sense, right? We don't have regulatory clarity. Why would we be expecting banks and institutions, or even Ripple for that matter, to be moving that 16 trillion of settlement and clearing onto the XRP Ledger when we don't have the rules of the road? Right? We can use these digital assets to an extent. We know XRP is not a security. We're not waiting for clarity, but we can only use it up to an extent, to the point at which the rules of the road have been laid. So we are not at 16 trillion. We're not at 1 trillion. Right? We're talking about we're talking about tens of billions And I think that we've crossed over 100 billion in the life cycle of Ripple payments and settling on XRP. But I mean, that whole opportunity right there that Brad Garlinghouse laid out is why we're in XRP still today. After being in XRP for so long, and XRP's price performance fell so short. Why? Because we're not moving institutional liquidity on XRP yet. I mean, this is so simple and easy to understand if you just take the time to listen to Brad Garlinghouse. And yes, it's difficult to accept, right? But we're nearly a year into downward price action for XRP after falling short in 2025, after bleeding out to $1. Why is this happening? You have your answer. You have your answer. We're unwinding all of this leverage, all of the speculation, and we haven't moved any of the institutional liquidity onto the XRP ledger yet. We've let a few drops come on. We have not turned on the spigot and let the real flow start coming. And that's why I'm still going to be in XRP, because until we get to that moment and we can see XRP's utility at scale fully realized, I want to see what XRP price is at that moment in time. And I will hold on to my XRP until that happens. And I don't think that we're far away from that taking place either. Now, speaking of Ripple partnerships, very excited to share this one. Caleb and Brown has officially partnered up with Ripple. Been waiting to share this one with you guys. This is awesome. What we're looking at right here is it's a practical upgrade to help streamline USD withdrawals and improve settlement efficiency for a smoother client experience, which for me has already been great. Every time I pull Caleb and Brown, have them send some money, I tell my broker, hey, can you send me some cash? It's in my bank account the next day. So the withdrawal process for me has already been so seamless. I mean, I guess we could speed it up a little bit faster, but 24 hours, no fee, no limit. That's why we work with the best, and they're partnered up with Ripple now. We absolutely love to hear it. If you guys haven't created your account with Caleb and Brown, you need to. I think it's one of the best options to have. And we don't put it all on one platform. We never say, oh, Caleb and Brown is the end-all, be-all. But I think they have some of the best execution in the marketplace. As XRP traded down at $1.01. Some of you guys didn't have your orders clear, did you? I know I had a couple that didn't. But they weren't orders that were on Caleb and Brown. And they probably should have been. Because Caleb and Brown goes to multiple liquidity venues to source you liquidity and execute your order. And they're going to be transparent with the fees, unlike some of these platforms that might say they're only charging 1%, but then they're going to tack on a spread. Then you're going to get hit with the additional fees. Then you go to withdraw and cash out. Oh, you finally made some money? You want to pull something out? They're going to hit you with withdrawal limit and withdrawal fees. None of that nonsense with Caleb and Brown. So this is a true institutional white glove experience for investing in digital assets, and you need to get hooked up with them right away. All right. Get with this platform for buying the bottom of this bear market, getting those orders actually through and executed so that we can position ourselves for that next bull run for taking, as Brad Garlinghouse laid out here, we're at 0 and we're going to 16 trillion and beyond. So I'm going to hold my XRP in free institutional grade custody with Caleb and Brown for now. Excited to see how this partnership with Ripple develops, but we'll continue to work with the best and put them in front of our community as a valuable community resource. With that being said, I'm off to our Discord weekly call this morning. We do it every Saturday. If you're looking to join us in the private community, just go over to my website, zachrector.com, sign up through Patreon to get access to Discord, and we'd love to have you over there.